Happy Father's Day to everybody out there. This review is coming a week late, mainly because the Cup race got delayed by a day due to rain. So that's one of the reasons why I am doing this review a little bit late. Well, I moved the week off that was scheduled for this week up a week. But we're going to get into things regarding the IndyCar race at Texas and the Cup race at Michigan. So let's get into it. This is the fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the PackerMan, and welcome to today's edition of the fuel. Coming a week later than it should have, due to the fact that the Cup race was rained out to Monday. But we're going to get into it now. Let's get into this straight away and get it over with. First things first, the DXC Technology 600 at Texas for the IndyCar series. Alright, so Takuma Sato starts from the pole position. You got a good clean start. Sato leads lap number 1. Ed Carpenter starts going backwards, and Alexander Rossi starts moving forwards, and he would be a factor by the end of this race. The AJ Foyt cars, both of them, Matthias Leicht and Tony Kanaan, are a lap down 30 laps into the race, so that team's not doing too good right now. Scott Dixon closes on Sato for the race lead on lap 37. Ryan Hunter-Reay was the first to kick off green flag stops on lap 58. This race was going by lightning fast. I mean, they completed 600 kilometers in less than 2 hours. I mean, that's pretty damn quick. Takuma Sato pits from the lead, but we had a very scary incident where he blew through his pit stall and hit one of his crew guys. Fortunately, the crew member was all right, and Sato had to do a stop-and-go penalty for hitting a crew member. Ryan Hunter-Reay takes over the lead on the exchange of pit stops. Hinchcliffe and Rossi are up to 3rd and 4th. Colton Herta with a brilliant pass on Pagenaud for the 5th position. I mean, he was making moves like that all race long. Hinchcliffe, Rossi, and Herta start fighting hard for 3rd on lap 110. Couldn't read my own handwriting for a second. Herta pulls off 2 Rossi moves on Rossi himself and Hinchcliffe for 3rd. Basically went around the outside of both of them, which is typically what Rossi does. Ryan Hunter-Reay pits from the lead on lap 115 to kick off the 2nd round of stops. Dixon finally pits at the halfway point. Ryan Hunter-Reay cycles back to the lead after pit stops, has a 3.6 second lead, but might have to make one additional stop more than Scott Dixon, because Dixon, of course, was saving fuel, and Ryan Hunter-Reay, being out front, was burning a lot of fuel. But then we got our first caution on lap 135. Zach Veach gets loose in turn 2, hits the wall and spins down the backstretch. Thankfully, nobody else hit him, but his race was done. Or we thought it was done, but they actually managed to get the car repaired, although he was already laps down by that point. Several cars come in for service. Hunter-Reay leads on the restart. Dixon challenges for the lead, but has to check up, and Rossi is right on his heels. Hinchcliffe gets by Herta for the 4th position. Dixon finally gets a run and passes Ryan Hunter-Reay for the lead, so we had our first pure lead change on lap 164. Rossi gets by Ryan Hunter-Reay for 2nd and then blows by Dixon for the lead. I mean, he just passed him like he was standing still. So we had our 2nd pure lead change on lap 175. Then 2 laps later, Dixon was able to get back by Rossi for the lead, so that's our 3rd pure lead change on lap 177. Ryan Hunter-Reay pits on lap 180, kicking off the 3rd round of pit stops. While this was going on, Rossi and Dixon were still fighting for the lead, and Rossi was able to get back by Dixon for the lead for our 4th pure lead change of the day on lap 186, which was actually the final pure lead change of the day. But the battle for the lead, though, would really heat up here at the end. Rossi pits from the lead on lap 188. Then Dixon pits from the lead on lap 191. Newgarden stays out, being one of the few drivers who pitted on the caution, and this would actually benefit him a lot more than I think a lot of people were expecting. Newgarden then pits from the lead, but because he had a gap on the other guys who pitted, was able to come to pit road, get his 4 tires and fuel, and was actually able to keep the lead. And I was just like, wow, that may have just won him the race. But then we get our second caution on lap 219 when James Hinchcliffe spins out in turn 2 and hits the inside wall, similar to what happened to Zach Veach. Several cars come in for service. Newgarden stays out and leads on the restart. Colton Herta gets by Alexander Rossi for third on the outside, which is a brilliant move. But then our third caution came on lap 229, also involving Herta. Herta had a great run on Dixon down to the inside, but Dixon basically tried to pinch him down going into turn 3, which is never really a good idea. He kept Herta down tight, and Herta had such a bad angle going into turn 3 that he slid up into Dixon and basically took both of them out, which is not good news for Dixon in the championship, because we're past the halfway point of the season, and he's now out of the race. So, and with Newgarden in the lead, it was looking like he was actually going to gain points on Newgarden, but then Newgarden did this, and his strategist basically pulled a fast one and got him out in front. So that really puts Dixon into a big hole in the championship as we head into the second half of the season. But the save of the year goes to Alexander Rossi. He was right behind Dixon and Herta when this happened. And he had to basically go to the apron in turn 3 and 4 and somehow save the car. Avoided both cars by mere inches. Like he was that close to him. And nearly spins out in turn 3 and somehow saves the car. And it's just like, wait, what? That was crazy. Newgarden leads on the restart with 12 laps to go. We had some great battling in the pack, but another great battle that developed was Rossi and Newgarden for the lead. Rossi kept getting great runs down the front stretch, and at one point he was actually ahead of Newgarden going into turn 1. I thought, oh my god, Rossi's going to clear him. But Newgarden, he's just the type of guy that's going to fight tooth and nail, and he did not give up on it and laid it on the gas in turns 1 and 2 and managed to get back by Rossi. Newgarden was able to hold Rossi at bay for the last several laps and wins the DXC Technology 600 at Texas, his third victory of the season, and extends his point lead. So what do I think of this race overall? It definitely got off to a bit of a slow start, but it definitely heated up at the end. It was one of those races where it started out like right here, and it was just on an upward trajectory pretty much. And we had a great battle at the end of the race. And it went by fast. I mean, yeah, we had the 3 cautions, but I think the average speed was over 180 miles an hour. I mean, that's how fast these guys were going. So, my final rating for the DXC Technologies 600 at Texas, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. It was alright. It was pretty good. It was a pretty good race. Like I said, it got off to a bit of a slow start, but it heated up near the end. We had a great battle at the end, and that save by Rossi, holy crap. That's definitely going to be on the highlight reel for sure. But yeah, I think we definitely need to start adding some more ovals back to the IndyCar series, because I mean, we've had 2 ovals this season, the Indy 500 and Texas, and they've been pretty exciting for the most part. So I think it's safe to say that we may need to add some ovals back to the IndyCar series. So that's my review of the IndyCar race at Texas Motor Speedway. So let's go ahead and get into the Cup race at Michigan. So this race was all kinds of weird. On Sunday, the start of the race was delayed by 50 minutes due to rain, like initially. The 2019 FireKeepers Casino 400 at Michigan. Stages 1 and 2, 60 laps. Stage 3, 80 laps. And just as it looked like we were about to go green, the rains came and basically stayed around and caused the race to be delayed to Monday. And the race actually had a 5 p.m. start time, which was highly unusual, considering that Michigan doesn't have any lights. Of course, considering that we're in the middle of June and nighttime doesn't fall until after 9 p.m., it certainly made sense and allowed all the weather to get out of the area. But another reason why they delayed it to 5 p.m. was because Women's World Cup is currently on right now. And something like that is something that only comes on every 4 years, whether we like it or not, is going to preempt something like NASCAR. So, a lot of people didn't like it, but, that's just the way it goes. But, anywho, Joey Logano starts from the pole in this race, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it right now. This was pretty much the Joey Logano show in this race. And this race had a lot of similar problems to what we saw at Auto Club. I mean, the cars were closer together for a longer period of time, but nobody could pass, really. I mean, there was a lot of shuffling back in the mid-pack, but as far as for the lead, it was just basically non-existent. I mean, we had a couple of big spurts of pure lead changes, but other than that, there wasn't really much going on at the front. And the pure lead change count, while it was decent, it's a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little bit deceptive. The real number is Joey Logano's lap leader count, which we'll get to at the end of the race. Paul Menard, who started, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Hamlin gets by Logano in turns 3 and 4 and leads lap 1. Had lots of pack racing throughout the field, like I said. Logano drafts back by Hamlin for the lead for a first pure lead change on lap 4. Paul Menard, who started up near the front, starts dropping back a bit. Harvick up to second by Hamlin. After 10 laps, we had a lot of freight train going on. There was some passing in the back, but not much at the front. Our first caution came out on lap 21, which was the competition caution. Everyone comes in for service, and Logano wins the race off pit road, so he leads on the restart. Truex makes it up to third. Had quite a bit of shuffling inside the top 10. Eric Almirola up to second on lap 34. Kurt Busch gets loose off of turn 2 and touches the wall just a bit. The choo-choo train continues, of course, because that's what it looked like for a lot of the race. Harvick has to pit on lap 54 with a loose wheel. We had our second pure lead change on lap 54 when Eric Almirola had a run on Logano amongst a bunch of lap cars and actually beat him to the start-finish line, but Logano got back by him and led the next lap for our third pure lead change on lap 55. Bowman moves up to second but is unable to challenge Logano, and Joey Logano wins stage 1. Everyone comes in for service, and Logano wins the race off pit road. So Logano leads the start of stage 2. Bubba Wallace gets penalized for a restart violation. And we had our second caution on lap 70 when Kyle Weatherman in the Rick Ware Racing car, number 51 car, tags the wall in turn 2, destroying the rear of the car. Rick Ware Racing sucks anyway, so nothing a real loss there. A lot of the field comes in for fuel. 9 cars do not come in. Johnson makes contact with Matt Tifft on pit road, which crinkles the right rear, which is not exactly a good thing. Logano leads on the restart. Larson really starting to work the high line, and it gets him up to third position. Shuffling continues in the mid-pack as usual. Larson moves up to second by Ryan Blaney. The top 7 at this point were questionable that they could make it to the end of the stage on fuel. and in fact they all had to pit for fuel in the late stages. Larson, the first of the 7 to peel off for pit road, with 7 laps to go in stage 2. Logano then pits the next lap, as does Kes and Jones. Blaney pits 1 lap after. But then Keselowski gets hit with a penalty for a safety violation. It looked like he actually ran over the air gun, which is a penalty. Chase Elliott pits with 4 laps to go, and then Clint Bowyer pits 1 lap afterwards. So that was all 7 of the guys that had to pit for fuel. Austin Dillon inherits the race lead and holds off Kevin Harvick to win stage number 2, which is actually his first career stage win. Stage 2 sucked. It was incredibly boring, and it was just like, wow, this may have been the most boring stage of the year. Most of the field comes in for service. Logano wins the race off pit road. He came back in to get left side tires and fuel and actually won the race off pit road. So Logano leads the start of stage 3. Harvick, Logano, and Elliott go 3 wide for the lead, so that was pretty exciting. Logano gets shuffled back a bit. So Harvick takes the lead on the restart. Larson nearly loses it off turn 4 when Logano gets into the back of him. Then we have our third caution on lap 129 when Clint Bowyer pushes up into the left rear of Eric Jones, gets loose and goes into the turn 2 wall, which pretty much ends his day. Eric Jones had a very nice save because he got tagged by Bowyer and was sideways, but was somehow still able to save it. So Harvick leads on the restart, but then Logano pushes Larson by Harvick into the lead going into turn 1, but then he nudges Larson out of the way in turn 2 to reclaim the lead. No pure lead change in this instance, though, because the 4th caution came out right afterwards on lap 136 when Austin Dillon gets nudged by William Byron into the turn 2 wall. So Logano leads on the restart this time. Had a big accordion in turns 1 and 2. Don't know how that was not a wreck. Larson pushes Harvick past Logano into the lead on the restart. Eric Jones has an unscheduled stop for a flat tire. Wouldn't be the last time he has a flat. Ryan Newman up into the top 10 at this point, challenging to get into the top 5. Then we have this quick spurt of lead changes. Logano challenges Harvick for the lead and takes it in turn 3. Kurt Busch shoots all the way up to 3rd. So we had our 4th pure lead change on lap 148. Harvick actually managed to get back by him the next lap on lap 149 for a 5th pure lead change, and then Logano gets back by him again for our 6th pure lead change on lap 150. And that would be the final pure lead change of the day. Harvick gets tight going into turn 2 and actually drops back to 7th. So Kurt Busch is now up to 2nd in the 1 car. Harvick moves back up to 4th rather quickly. Truex gets by Kurt Busch for 2nd. And then Chase Elliott kicks off green flag pit stops after hitting the wall with the right rear with about 45 laps to go. Kevin Harvick passes Kurt for 3rd, and Larson goes underneath a Busch for 4th. One guy we have not talked about all review long is Kyle Busch, because he was pretty much at the back of the pack for much of the race. And he begins finally making his presence known inside the top 10 with 42 laps to go. Daniel Suarez moves up into the top 5 with 41 laps to go. Front Row Motorsports cars Matt Tifft and David Reagan make contact in turn 2 but keep going. Reagan actually has to pit with massive front damage. Harvick gets around Truex for 2nd, so it's looking like Harvick might be the only one who could challenge Logano at this point. Kurt Busch passes Truex for 3rd. And then Larson pits with 27 laps to go. Harvick pits from 2nd 1 lap later. They both take 4 tires, which was ultimately not the right move to make because pretty much everybody else took either fuel only or just 2 tires. So that put both of those guys way back in the pack. The top 3 have Logano, Kurt Busch, and Truex pit with 25 laps to go for just right side tires, like I said. And Logano cycles back around with the lead. Logano has a 1 1/4 second lead with 10 laps to go, so it's looking like he has this race all wrapped up. But then Truex and Kurt Busch start drafting together, and they actually close the gap to Logano Then we get our fifth and final caution on lap 197 when Eric Jones loses the left rear tire and spins in turn 2, gets stuck in the grass. Was able to get it back going again, but by that point the caution had already come out. So we're going into a green-white checkered. So Logano leads on the overtime restart, and he got a great restart. A lot of people were thinking he might have jumped it. The field goes 3 wide in the back. Kurt Busch actually gets a great run and gets around Truex for second, but doesn't really have anything for Joey Logano. And Joey Logano wins the FireKeepers Casino 400 at Michigan, led 161 of the 200 laps. So, what did I think of this race? Meh. I mean, this race, it basically felt the same as Auto Club. You know, and you had some exciting things. I mean, this race definitely had its moments, like the spur to lead changes. And stage 3, I think in particular, had some great moments, but that second stage was god awful. You know, and you say, well, there was some like fuel stuff going on at the end of stage 2. That may be true, but the fact of the matter is, it was not the end of the race. It was stage 2. I mean, what happened at the end of stage 2 was inconsequential to the finish of the race. You know, and I hate to break it to you, Austin Dillon fans. You know, we got his first career stage win. Who gives a fuck? The guy's not winning the championship this year. One stage win isn't going to mean shit for the championship. It's not. He'll be lucky if he even makes the chase this year, considering the fact that it's been nothing but Penske and Gibbs this year. There's been only one race this year that has not been won by Penske or Gibbs, and that was at Talladega with Chase Elliott. That's it. Out of the 15 races that we've had in the Cup Series this year, 14 of them have been won by either a Penske car or a Gibbs car. You know, just like last year when we had the trend of the big three of Truex, Kyle Busch, and Kevin Harvick winning seemingly every week. This year, it's the trend of Gibbs versus Penske. And that doesn't look to change anytime soon. And this race felt a lot like Auto Club. It had a lot of the same problems as Auto Club. They were technically closer together, but they couldn't pass. They couldn't pass the leader. And to be honest, you know, the fact that Joey Logano pretty much dominated this race, I mean, he led 161 of the race's 200 laps. Let that sink in for a minute. 161 laps. This was the Joey Logano show. And it certainly doesn't help the fact that I can't stand Joey Logano. I think there are times when he can be a real jackass. So seeing this guy lead, you know, pretty much over 75% of the race, I mean, honestly, it loses a point because of that. Because I had to watch this guy pretty much lead a large majority of the race, and I really don't like him. So at the end of the day, this race is going to get the same rating that I gave the Auto Club race, a 3 out of 10. I mean, like I said, this race definitely had its moments. I mean, that battle between Logano and Harvick, where they swapped it back and forth, I mean, that was pretty good. This race definitely had its moments, but like Auto Club, it was just meh. There wasn't really a whole lot going on in this race. So, that's pretty much going to do it for the fuel here today on Father's Day. Of course, coming a week late because, of course, the Cup race got delayed, and I wasn't really able to watch the whole thing until after NASCAR posted it on their channel. So that's why I kind of moved the week off up a little bit. I moved it up to last week instead of this week, but you know, it is what it is. But that's going to pretty much do it. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out. Have a good one.